It was really good. So proper flow was restored to the PI. But it was the first huge milestone. There's more to do, as we all know. So tonight they will address ongoing plans for monitoring water, soil, and sediment, the methods they will use to assess whether other areas of the interceptor system may be vulnerable, and how environmental cleanup and rehabilitation will proceed, although it has started already. Continuing communication as a mayor is really always on top of mind to me so the safety is important to all of us, and that's why a lot of us are here. We understand that this event raises huge concerns about the river, the canal, the towpath, the areas we love, the long-term negative environmental impacts, and that includes, of course, our wildlife that we see on the canal and on the towpath. And also for the rivermen and who are using the Potomac as their work and how to help them get through this as well. Again, this is another meeting where it's an opportunity for you all to talk and to express your concerns, not just an update, but really to discuss deeply. And we have some other representatives. Is NPS here? And Army Corps of Engineers? I think they may be on their way. I hope so. If not, I will work with DC Water if you have questions for NPS or Army Corps, right? And we can write them down and I can be in communication with them. Okay, so, all right, I will get you guys going, give your updates. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor, thank you for hosting us tonight. It's good to be back in the community. We are going to provide a brief update. I know that we had a longer presentation last time. Our goal here is to give you an update, and I think the mayor already told you the good news, which was on Saturday we were able to put the pipe back in service, so we're thrilled to be able to announce that. But I'm going to walk through a brief presentation, and we know you have questions, and so we're going to do our best to leave sufficient time for that. So let me start it off. A little background on the Potomac Interceptor for those of you who were not at the previous briefing, and I have the remote. There's the remote. Okay, off to a good start here. Apologies. All right. There we go. All right, so the Potomac Interceptor is a 54-mile sewer, collection sewer. It runs out as far as Dulles Airport and carries flow into the District of Columbia, where it's treated at the Blue Plains Advanced Wastewater Treatment Plant, which is at the very bottom of the diamond. If the district is a diamond, it's at the very southern end. It serves a population of about 500,000 people, serves many communities, including you, Fairfax and Loudoun, the town of Vienna, Herndon, and then I mentioned Dulles Airport. It ranges in diameter from 30 to 96 inches. On average, it carries 60 million gallons of sewage per day. It can be less during dry weather and higher during wet weather, which is something that we kept our eye on when we were making the repair. And then again, flows are treated at Blue Plains. The specific location, as you all are aware, is just near the American Legion Bridge. And at that section, it's a 72-inch pipe made out of reinforced concrete. So we've been, one of the priorities was to keep the Claire Barton Parkway open. It's our lifeline for people and supplies. And the break occurred really close to the Claire Barton Parkway. So we used a technique called supportive excavation in order to make sure that we didn't have any impact on the Claire Barton Parkway. This is a timeline of the events, and again, March 14th on Saturday morning, we were able to start testing the pipe, and we're able to return all of the flow into it. We were able to deal with the wet weather over the last several days, so we're really happy that we were able to do that. So let me start at the beginning and just point out some of the highlights. Obviously, the break occurred on January 19th, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, when we became alerted of movement outside of an odor control facility that we have at that site. The very first priority was to get a bypass in place, and that means taking the flow out of the pipe above the break and putting it back in below the break. We were fortunate to be able to work with the National Park Service to make use of what was the dry C&O Canal, installed pumps. The very first pumps were online 5 days later, on January 24th, 40 million gallons a day, so MGD is million gallons a day, 40 MGD of pumping capacity. That's when the wet weather happened. We did have some complications because wipes clogged the wipes, flushable wipes. Actually, please don't use those wipes. They're bad for sewer systems, not just for DC water in this project, but those wipes clogged our pumps, and when that happened, we had to take the pumps out of service. We brought more pumping capacity online on the 27th, and then we were able to begin excavation. I think last time we talked about the rock dam that we found. During the construction of this pipe, what appears to have happened is that large rocks were used as fill, and when the pipe collapsed, all of that fill clogged the pipe, and that caused the overflow. So we, in order to move forward, we put in additional pumps to stop all of the flow, and then we started doing the excavation. The overflows that began on January 19th were significantly reduced by January 24th with the pumping capacity. Since February 9th, we had not had any overflows into the Potomac River. And again, now that the flow is back in the pipe, we will turn to the capital project, which is next. I'll talk about that in a second. Just a couple pictures of the response effort. To the left is one set of the bypass pumps. So those 3 pumps represent 40 million gallons a day of pumping capacity. That took the flow out of the Potomac interceptor. It was conveyed down through the dry C&O Canal to this cofferdam, and at the cofferdam, the flow was channeled back into the Potomac interceptor with the facility that you see on the right. This is a picture of some of the rocks that we took out of the broken pipe, and that really complicated the effort and complicated the incident because those rocks blocked nearly all of the flow. The repair effort was to strengthen the pipe both upstream and downstream of the break location. And so you can see on the right what looks like a new pipe. So that is a spray concrete-like material that strengthens the pipe, and that allowed the flow to be put back into the Potomac interceptor. This is the location of a bulkhead, and on Saturday we were able to pull the bulkhead out, and that was what restored flow to the pipe. That bulkhead stopped the flow so that we could excavate and remove the pipe, the rocks. Pardon me. The area on the right, you can see that is an open excavation. It's a supportive excavation, and you can see the flow in gray at the very bottom of the pipe. If you go out to the site, you will see that this is still open, and I want to explain why. We are going to be transitioning to our capital improvement project. So that capital improvement project was planned. We've advanced it. By keeping this section open, we can use it to drop the new sections of pipe in. So having this location open is going to expedite the capital improvement project, which is a method called slip lining. It was a big response effort, as you may know. Use of that canal, we were able to avoid nearly 2 billion gallons of overflow that would have otherwise gone to the Potomac River. We've removed 2,300 tons of debris, the equivalent of 1,300 cars. We filled a lot of bags of rags, enough to fill a home swimming pool with the rags that we have pulled out of the pumps. And then there were a lot of equipment and materials delivered to the site, 35 tons of gravel, a lot of fuel in order to keep those pumps operational. So the fuel was delivered daily. Big, huge effort, and we're really pleased that we were able to put the flow back in the pipe on Saturday. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda Zander. She's going to talk a little bit about our environmental efforts.
Yeah, so just to give everybody a quick update on where we are in terms of our monitoring and our rehabilitation. Hopefully you guys are seeing every day, whether it's on our website or whether it's on DOE's website that's compiling monitoring from multiple different agencies, that we've been posting our results for the water quality monitoring that we've been doing. So we have sampling that occurs daily at 10 locations. We started with 6 locations. We've added 4 based on a lot of the feedback that we've got from all of you, from the community, about kind of those high use areas that we wanted to monitor. So we monitor every day for E. coli, and we post our results. This is just a snapshot of what we're seeing in March. Generally, what we're seeing is kind of a decline in levels as we move forward. So you can kind of see from the data that what we're seeing for the most part is that the river seems to be returning to where it was before the overflow events. You can see some of those areas in red that are above the criteria, and that just shows some of the natural fluctuations that we see in E. coli due to things like runoff and rain and weather. So we talked a little bit about this at the last meeting, and we wanted to give an update on where we are with the initial cleanup efforts that we've done kind of at the site itself. We broke up the site into 4 different cleanup areas based on where the overflow occurred and then went to the river. So one of our first areas is we call Area 1. That's the drainage channel that's along the Clara Barton Parkway. And from there, the overflow went down under into the culvert that goes under the C&O Canal, and that runs into a tributary that carries it to the Potomac River itself. So those are what we refer to as areas 1, 2, and 3. For area 4, that area is the C&O Canal, so that's the canal where we use that as the emergency bypass, and so that is another area that we've been targeting as in this initial cleanup effort also. And this table just kind of shows you where we are tonight with our rehab in these initial areas. So for areas 1, 2, and 3, we're basically complete with this initial phase, which is the removal of all the debris and temporary stabilization. We've had multiple partners, federal partners, working with us in these areas. We've shared the cleanup of Area 1 with EPA, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has taken the cleanup in areas 2 and 3. Now that the flow is restored back into the PI, we've actually also started the cleanup in the canal in Area 4. So we're working on that now with the initial just kind of cleaning and getting the sludge out, and then we'll be continuing on in that area to do the soil removal down to the clay layer, and then inspections and cleaning of the canal and repairs where needed. And then in the other areas, we'll be following on. We have EPA that has been doing soil sampling to determine kind of the cleanup impacts in that area, and so we'll be looking for their results and seeing the guidance in terms of if we have any more work to do in that area before we do the very final stabilization. So that kind of targets basically the exact impact area, which is where we wanted to get in and clean up first, because that was the most impactful area from the overflow. We are working with MD to assess extending, if we need to extend to other locations downstream. So we're working on a impact analysis right now and a comprehensive plan that we'll be submitting to MDE. One of the things that we've done is brought on an environmental expert firm that's going to be helping us develop that plan and coordinate all the means and methods. And one thing that we've been hearing over and over again and that we understand is a huge concern from the community is the sediment, especially in some of these high-use areas and some of these low-flow zones where everyone's going in with their dogs or putting in their kayaks. And so one thing we want to do to address those concerns is look at the sediment and evaluate those in those areas. So we are kind of, as part of this overall comprehensive plan, we're also expediting an initial kind of sediment screening evaluation that we're going to be hoping that we can get in front of MD here soon, in probably the next week or so, and determine the exact appropriate locations and means and methods for that work. And just to close out my portion, just to give everyone a little bit of an example of what we've done out there, you can see some photos from Area 1, the drainage channel along the Clara Barton Parkway, and Area 2, the part of the rock run culvert that goes to the tributary where we've got out there. You can see how dirty it was, all those rags that Matt mentioned, the initial cleanup phase, manual scraping, some small equipment to help us get that out of there, and then the temporary stabilization that you see in the last picture. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Just a couple more slides here, and then we'll turn it over for questions. There is a lot of work that we have planned in the Potomac Interceptor over the next 10 years. The projects that you see listed here are near-term work. The first two lines were originally a single project of 10,000 linear feet of pipe rehab. We have pulled forward a portion of that pipe rehab, and that's what we're going to use those open channels for in order to lower the new pipe sections, the slip lining process into place. So we're working to start that in the spring. That's a $30 million effort that will address 2,700 linear feet of pipe near the break location. We're also working on the next section, the additional 7,300 linear feet that will take us to the full 10,000. That project is slated to start in the spring. We have additional projects, a Broad Run in Fairfax, and then at Cabin John, manhole near manhole 4252. We number all of the manholes. Various methods will be used to strengthen the pipe. A combination of geopolymer, which is that application I talked about earlier, as well as slip lining, depending on the location. I think the last time we were here, we also mentioned that we are doing a reinspection of the entire pipe. We prioritize certain locations, and then we're also doing a complete inspection. That could lead to reordering of projects or new projects. As we find conditions, we will address them and reorder our CIP as necessary. So then moving forward, we will continue the environmental rehabilitation. We'll be working on that sediment plan very quickly to identify the locations. And then we're going to be beginning the next phase of the interceptor rehabilitation, which is that slip lining effort. So that concludes the prepared remarks, and we're happy to turn it over for questions and comments. Unless, Adam, did you? Okay. Adam Ortiz.
Thank you, Matt. I know we're anxious to get to questions, so I'll just be brief. I just wanted to share some notes from the state perspective. It is good to be here. Thank you, Amanda and Matt. Thank you, Mayor. It's always a pleasure and great to be back here. But thank you, everybody, for hanging in and remaining engaged. We need your feedback. The restoration is a team effort, and all of us are on the team together. So our role, as I said before, and I'm not going to repeat too much of what I said before, is our role at the state is to keep an eye on the restoration when there's potential for impacts to Maryland waters. And of course, the Potomac River is a big and important Maryland water, but that also includes all the feeder streams and tributaries that go into the river, and also material on the land that has the potential of going to the river. So we have a big role in the restoration, and as Amanda and Matt referenced, we did provide a letter being very clear about what our expectations are for restoration. They have been very responsive in reviewing the plan and launching the impact analysis. It's hard to know what the right thing to do is if we don't have a good sense of what the actual impact is on the water and is on the land, and they've been very responsive. I just want to say I'm joined tonight by our Assistant Secretary. I'm the Deputy Secretary, our Assistant Secretary. I don't know why they picked those adjectives per se, but our Assistant Secretary, Zach Schaefer, who was with me at EPA and comes from the Office of Water and is an expert in that field, and Lisa Jones, who's with our Communications and Outreach team, who's here. So just a few remarks. We're moving into monitoring, and as Matt and Amanda mentioned, what we're seeing so far, and it's a team effort, monitoring. We have monitors, they have monitors, District of Columbia has monitors, State of Virginia has monitors. All the signs are very positive. What we're concerned about now is, what I call the shallows, and we talked about it a little bit earlier today on our call, and good to see you, is finding those nooks and crannies that don't have the flow that the main stem of the river has. These are places where there could be material trapped, where it could be tidal, where it could be sitting in muddy areas or flats. And that's important for a few reasons. One, it's areas that we don't typically monitor, and this is the global we, so there might be sewage in there that we don't know about yet, so we have to know about that. And secondly, and most importantly, those are the places where we interact. Those are the places where we, put in our kayaks and in our canoes. Those are the places where our dogs go in the water. Those are the places where we walk, where our kids and families recreate. So those are really the contact points that are very, very high priority to us. And it was mentioned by the previous speakers, but I won't belabor it. But together we're developing a plan on what are those highest priority heavy use areas for monitoring, And, Lock 6 comes to mind in those sort of marquee places, but we also want to identify the places that might be unofficial put-ins, places, rope swings. The mayor and I were talking about rope swings, and we were supposed to tour yesterday, but there was another event that grabbed our attention with the press conference, but we're going to be out a lot in monitoring and sharing notes. We are in receipt of feedback from the paddle sport community and others. Keep that information coming. I know you're sending it to the mayor, and the mayor is sharing it with us. Just CC all of us so we're able to benefit from the wisdom and the experience that you have as the closest neighbors to the asset. But that is what we're really focused in on now, is, what are those nooks and crannies, those places that really require our attention and could be a threat to public health. So we're on that. I don't see Dean in the room, but channeling Dean, of course, we absolutely have enforcement powers. It's premature and it's privileged right now to share any of our internal discussions about that. Our priority, though, is making sure that that asset is restored as quickly as possible. And I'll also just say, if it's not obvious, is that DC Water, and I was a board member years ago, and Jennifer is currently a board member, is a public utility, and they're not a private company. That's not private equity. It's funded by the collaborative effort of all the jurisdictions in the service area. So a big penalty would come out of the pockets of the ratepayers, most likely. So just keep that in mind. All of us are ratepayers. In the service area. So we want to be mindful that our focus is on restoring the asset, holding folks accountable if that's required, but really restoring the asset as quickly and responsibly as possible. The last thing I'll say, and I'll sit down because really we need to hear from you. We didn't have enough time for questions last time, and not just questions, but also thoughts, comments, suggestions, things you think we should hear. We're going to be in listening mode. But the last thing I want to say is the last time we were here, we received concern from some of the for-profit and nonprofit organizations that engage young people in paddle sports and education and training. And if there's relief for potential impacts of small businesses, we're still working on that. Even on my drive here, and I did miss the exit, so sorry about that, but I did get more information about that because I was on a call with some of our colleagues with the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation and also the state Department of Commerce to figure out what the best channel is for any potential impact. So I responded to some folks over email. I don't know if you're in the room, that we're still working on that. We don't have answers quite yet, but that's certainly on our to-do list. So with that, I'm going to sit back here and end talking mode and enter listening mode. So with that, Mayor, I defer to you if there's any other. Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me, Sherry.
No, that's okay. So we do have a mic set up here. If you would like to, if you have questions and you want to come on up and ask your questions, and then we'll direct them to whoever is most appropriate to answer them. Anybody have any? Yep. Well, if you want to step up to the mic, and if for some reason you can't come up to the mic, raise your hand and I'll walk over to you as well. One thing I do want to mention, because Adam talked about taking that feedback, DC Water is also taking your comments and your feedback. If you go to dcwater.com, right on the home page is a link through to our Potomac Interceptor collapse page. There's a form there that you can go to and provide us with your feedback. We're using that to help us inform our decision making and sharing that with our partners at MDE as well. So please, if you haven't, provide your feedback there as well. It's a lot better for us to have it down in writing so we have that documented information. Okay.
Hi, my name is Eric Nothman. I am the race director for Potomac Whitewater Racing Center. I'm representing Potomac Whitewater Racing Center. But before I just make some comments and ask a question, I'd like to express appreciation for the hard work of all the people involved. I've walked through the site. The amount of effort that's gone in has just been, enormous. It's amazing. It's impressive. And please don't take any of my comments as detracting in any way from the hard work and the good, dedicated effort that's been made up to this point. As a matter of fact, if I could, I'd like to ask everyone, if you agree, let's give them a little bit of appreciation.
On behalf of DC Water, I can tell you that we are all very, very grateful, and we've seen that support throughout this process from our crews out there working through the cold and snow and getting food deliveries from the neighborhood. So we appreciate you guys just as much.
That's wonderful to hear. So, in the spirit of cooperation and constructive input, I'd like to share with you our particular case. We are Potomac Whitewater Racing Center, for those of you who don't know, is an organization that's been growing along with the Brookmont neighborhood for 60 years. And that our location and where we do our practicing is right there at right below Lock 6 or downhill from Lock 6 on something called the feeder canal. And it is one of those exceptions, as you were saying, in terms of the way that the water goes into the channel. There's a dam down at the bottom, and so it can slow down the outflow. And that is used, it was surveyed, interestingly enough, by George Washington. In any case, it was originally in a canal that went around Little Falls, but now it is used as the feeder canal, and it feeds water into the canal system itself, the C&O canal. But it is just ideal for us because we have our gates. You might see some poles hanging there. This is used 5 or 6 times a year for races. These races are ACA, American Canoe Association, auspices races, and some of them actually give international standing through the ICF. And we are the largest whitewater slalom racing group in the United States, and we're the most dominant in terms of our athletes in the national races of the United States.
That's awesome.
And this is our practice location. It's been our practice location, and it's our practice location for a real reason. The reason why the Brookmont community and the paddlers have grown up there is because of this location. And it does have some unique characteristics. We cannot just pick it up and move it someplace else. We have among our athletes many who are Olympic hopefuls, and they work very hard. You need to paddle in the water 12 hours to 14 hours a week if you truly want to be nationally competitive. 12 hours to 14 in the water. So this is full immersion. These are children ages 8 through 18. Their immune systems are not as well developed as adults. In general, these are outdoors kids. They have nicks, on their legs and their arms. I'm sure that you have many parents here. If you've ever counted how many your kid has, they have quite a few. And yet they go into the water. And this is what we have been doing for years and years, and it's year-round. So we have been interrupted and disrupted by this spill, and we've had to move our practices elsewhere. Right now, our coaches are down in Alabama doing, national races, and this is the time period where people are getting onto the national team. So we are very focused on trying to, as best we can, determine, do we have a safe river or not? What has to happen in terms of remediation? And, when can we actually tell our parents this could be a safe location again? When can we determine? So I know that you're with us on this. I know you want to make sure that it's safe. We engaged an international expert because we wanted to have an external opinion. We would like to know ourselves, what is it what kind of testing can we tell our kids that, yes, it's safe for you now? And what we learned in the process was that the E. coli testing that is the standard method which is represented here is inadequate, that it does not correlate with all the pathogens that are out there. And some of the most serious ones are warranted to be tested, not just in the water, but also in the sediments. And in particular, MRSA, MRSA, norovirus, and also Cryptosporidium, SPP. These 3 have been brought to our attention as being, in particular, not correlated with E. coli and could be dangerous to to people who go into the water and immerse themselves. So I wanted to bring this to your attention because we have done some research on this, and we're hoping that this can be part of the input process when you're trying to decide the remediation, and that you are able to take as one of your, it says, restores designated uses. So embedded in my statement, thank you for your patience, is I'm hoping that designated use includes use by kids 8 to 18 immersed in the water, there 14 hours a week in the water, that is a use case. And that this is one that I think might be the most stringent use case you may have in terms of how difficult it may be to achieve, and I'm asking that you put this as a marker and a priority in your remediation plan and in your testing plan. Is that something that you think you can do?
Yeah, so you got a lot of questions there. So let me start here with Amanda to talk a little bit about the water quality sampling that DC Water is doing, how we're doing that, and the addition, actually, after listening to your feedback, of doing some water quality sampling down there at Lock 6 with the feeder channel. So I'll have Amanda talk about that, and then I think, Adam, you can probably talk a little bit more about the broader water quality sampling.
If I could, I would like to start. I first want to thank you for acknowledging the hard work of the men and women, the contractors who put in the long, hard hours in the cold to make the repair. So first, I wanted to acknowledge that. I was able, last time we were here, to meet one of your athletes, and he spoke very passionately about the time that he spends in the river. And so what you're saying is important to us, it's important to me. It's one of the reasons why we added the additional water quality testing location, because of the feedback that he provided after that meeting. So we are looking, and I'll let Amanda add some more detail here, but we are looking at additional testing. One of the things Amanda talked about tonight was the role of sediment testing, and that's something that we're accelerating to put out an initial plan next week. We want to work with MDE and make sure we're doing this the right way, and we will take your comments. I appreciate the additional tests that you've requested. I've written them down, and they'll absolutely be part of the input process, so thank you.
I think Matt pretty much covered it, but yeah, taking all of this information back in terms of locations, in terms of the type of testing that's being asked, is helpful, and something we'll be delivering directly to our environmental experts that are going to help us get this plan to MD and you guys hopefully very soon.
And I don't want to belabor, but I also want to. We're happy to come out to the site if it's helpful to walk. Happy to paddle if it's better to do that. And if, I know that there's several organizations here, so we're happy to do that just to become more familiar with the site and understand precisely. But yeah, everything you say registers, and we're working on the plan collaboratively.
We would be very happy to dialogue with you. I think we've sent a letter. It was signed by the president of the Brookmont Citizens Association. It was signed by our president. Yeah. And to your organization, we are asking for dialogue because we do understand it's, we don't mean to throw something over the transom and just see what happens and then, come back at each other in a negative way. We very much would love to be able to work with you in a constructive way. And we think that we have some inputs that can be valuable, not just for us, because we believe that if you are able to meet these standards for our kids, you will then be meeting the standards for everybody. And in that, you will be building public trust. And public trust is very, very important at the moment, I believe, to raise the profile and the appreciation for your organizations, separate and apart from, the incredible importance it is to be safe for our children. I'll just mention one other thing, if I could. Funding, I have a question, a couple questions. Long-term testing, one of the things that we have had a challenge hearing about is, and maybe you're not in a position at this moment to say, but we believe that testing needs to go on for a longer period of time because we don't know if the sediments may be disturbed by some future storm, some other sort of activity. How will we know if we're not testing? And I mentioned in our letter, but also we have a concern because EPA with Christy Todd Whitman back after 9/11 went to the first responders and she said, it's safe. Go ahead. You guys can breathe this air and you can move this debris. And guess what? At the time, that was not true. And when it was brought to her attention many years later, she said, oh, we didn't lie. We didn't know. We didn't know. We didn't have the data. Okay, and I'm just bringing this up as a poignant reminder. It is very easy to not have the data, blithely move forward, and then create incredible harms. In this particular case, many of those people have chronic illnesses today, and they died. Those families were harmed. That should not be the model, and it should be a warning to us, all of us. This is what can happen. We can't let this happen. It shouldn't happen here. And in our case, I am here to speak on behalf of the kids who are 8 to 18 years old. These are not first responders. They did not raise their hand and say, I will take risks for society. These are people that deserve our protection, and they are depending on you. And I am bringing it to your attention how easy it is for bureaucracies. Let's face it, folks, a lot of us work for bureaucracies. We've got lots of experience in bureaucracies. Bureaucracies fail us all the time. It is people who breathe life into those bureaucracies. It is people who make them work. And I'm asking you to please be very conscious of that as you move, hopefully, your bureaucracy to do the right thing. Now, from the standpoint of funding, I will. I promise. Funding issues I've become aware of. University of Maryland has been doing some testing, and it's my understanding they will be out of money by the end of this month. I don't know if there's anything you guys can do about this, but I know you've been focused on fixing the pipe. Thank you very much. Extremely important. The University of Maryland is a tremendous resource. If it's underutilized, that's not a good thing when it comes to testing. We have experts there. They can be involved. I would just appeal to you to consider putting that as a marker, as something you might consider what can be done to support them. And separately, I, as a citizen, I have access to our representatives. If you need money for whatever it is that you're doing, please raise your hand. People in this room, you don't know. Someone can make some action to make sure you get the funding you need in order to do the job the right way. And I stand here, I'll do everything I possibly can if I know that you need funding.
Well, all right. Well,
I will, sir.
Yeah.
It's yours. Please take it.
So thank you very much, and we really do appreciate your concern, and we take everything to heart. I think Matt can also maybe talk a little bit about, and I think, Amanda, you touched on in your presentation, about the potential for additional testing. You know, we're doing it now, and how long that may continue.
Right. That's going to be part of the submission that we make to the Maryland Department of Environment. It'll include a testing plan, including the testing horizon. So we haven't made any determinations about that yet. That's something that we're working on.
That's something being considered, right? Okay. All right. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you guys for coming back for this meeting. I think I'm going to reiterate that trust is the biggest problem we have right now. I'm also a boater, for those who don't know. I do not represent peak athletes or children or old people. I'm middle-aged. Most of my friends are middle-aged, and none of them trust anything that's going on right now. I can tell you I also very much appreciate the folks who are getting the work done on the ground. Those are the folks who talk. When I go to Lock 10 and I walk around and I look at what's going on and I talk to folks, that's who actually responds and gives me information, and I appreciate that. I would love to know, for example, how many workers have fallen ill on the site. I have talked to people who said that they were the ones with their arms in the machines unclogging wipes. It would be great for the community to know if those people are healthy, because they certainly were not wearing head-to-toe PPE, right? They were just in there with their hands doing insane work that most of us don't want to do. That's awesome, and that's the kind of information, like how many people on your site have fallen ill. I think it's interesting to continue to see that there's no major flows into the river since whatever date. The levels, and this is from your testing, which I appreciate, at Swainson Lock seem to have been over elevated given the increase in river flows if there hadn't been a continuation of flow into the river. I know that the Potomac River Keepers did testing in the tunnel, above the tunnel, and below the tunnel, and found, hey, there's an interesting discrepancy here. I know that you guys forced DC Water to build a little dam below that. I went out there on a day that it was raining, and water was going right around that dam, and sure enough, the levels went back up at Swainson that day. I know at the DC Council meeting, the request was made, hey, get the testing more frequent, right? I can go paddling on a Monday morning, and the last water quality data that I've seen is on Thursday, okay? And so I'm in a community where I communicate with a lot of voters, and to your point, one of them said, I'm not getting back in that water until one of these doctors who says it's safe goes and swims down Little Falls. That afternoon, I wrote an email to a number of people who are in this room. I got a response from one. Thank you, Dr. Davis. I invited you guys to come rafting. Okay, I have the support of a number of groups that have rafts. They have insurance. They have all the gear you would need to go rafting. We have raft guides and trained professionals to take people rafting. And you know, the only response was, hey, this is a little bit late in the game, but hey, join a call, talk with some other staff. And that was actually an extremely helpful call. So I really appreciate that. I will invite you also. I think that's important. And the last thing, you know, boating is important to a lot of us, but it is not as important as drinking water. One of the things that really frustrated me at the DC Council meeting was learning how you guys evaluated the pipe. And there was, I want to say 4 years ago, this section that broke was rated a 3.5, where 5 is bad and 1 is good. And then it got upgraded to 3, which is an improvement 2 years later. And the explanation that I heard about that was they evaluated more of the pipe, and so on average it was better. And as a boater and a climber, and someone who works in risk analysis, that's a very concerning way to evaluate the quality of a pipe. And so as you say, you're continuing to evaluate the PI and you haven't found other areas, knowing that you didn't find this area to be an emergency, it's concerning, right? So if I'm a boater and I look at a river section and feet per mile drop, that's going to tell me a lot about it. But if I don't know that in 100 feet per mile on a mile-long run, all of that drop is in the first 10 feet, that's very different. And so if I look at it and I say, all right, now at 2 miles, oh, it's still just, it's now 50 feet per mile. It doesn't make the run different. There's still a hazard of a waterfall at the front, right? It's the same thing for climbing. You evaluate a climb on the crux move. And if it's really easy up to the crux and it's really easy after, it still is evaluated on the crux. So when I hear that that's how the pipe is evaluated, it's concerning, and it again raises these trust issues. So I'm now communicating with, a couple hundred boaters and a number of the river schools in the area, because I've taught for a lot of them, not yours, but a bunch of the other ones that are less professional. And they're all asking me, well, you talk to everybody, what's going on? I say, look, they're publishing data. A lot of people do not believe your data because they just say, well, it's DC water. They're lying about other things. You have a trust issue. You need to make it right. I am inviting you guys to go boating. Respond. It'll be a good time. You might swim, and maybe it'll prove that there's horrible stuff in the water because there's no testing happening. Maybe it'll not prove anything because, you can't prove a negative. But, please.
So you've got a couple questions. One about worker safety. Matt, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about some of the safety protocols that we have on site. And some of the other questions, there's a lot there, so we'll start with that.
Yeah, sure. We've started the cleanup effort. I can't address your question directly because I don't have the data that you've requested. Obviously, the worker safety is very important to us. It's critical, and it has been critical through the entire effort. I mean, down to when there were conditions where we needed to tie off employees to prevent them from falling and injuring themselves in the hole. As part of the remediation effort, we have workers in Tyvek suits. So safety is important. I appreciate the comment, and we'll take that back and see what kind of data we can find. I didn't get an invitation for the boating, and I would like one because I'll go with you. Yeah. So I don't think you gave an invitation to me. I will address. Let me try to address the condition of the pipe. I mean, I think that the simple message here is that sewer gases degrade pipes. Breaks do occur in pipes, not just here, but across the country. We are reprioritizing our inspections, and that's why we identified the 22 locations as well as the entire length of the pipe. And we're going to prioritize any areas of concern. We have taken a look at our various protocols. I think that lessons learned are important from an event like this, and we're going to implement those lessons. There are a few members of our board of directors who are here. The board of directors have asked for or have commissioned 3 independent reviews that are being handled through a law firm. One is going to look at the various past inspections and the actions taken. Another is going to look at the root cause analysis of the break, and then the third is going to be an independent review of the prioritization process. So those are underway, and we will take those findings and we'll implement the recommendations.
And Matt, you also talked earlier about the significance of the rocks and boulders. We've also taken another proactive step at DC Water to look at that issue and whether it's a potential issue anywhere else, correct?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing that up. I mean, the reason why this incident was so complicated is because of the presence of those boulders. What normally happens in a sewer, in a pipe collapse, is that the pipe breaks, some of the topsoil washes into the pipe, and then there's a sinkhole that's formed, but the entire pipe isn't blocked. In this instance, because of the construction methods that were used, the pipe was blocked, and that's what caused the overflow. That's what led to the volume of overflows that we had, as well as the complication in making those initial repairs. So one of the data points that we are using is that as we identify locations that need high priority repairs, we're going to be looking at the construction drawings, trying to understand if the same conditions existed at those new locations that existed at this one, where it was likely that the rocks were used as fill, which is not a practice that we would do today, and then using ground sonar in order to identify those rocks and then help us plan the repair effort.
Yeah, and I think we have Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on the phone as well. You brought up the issue of Rock Run Culvert. That is part of the work that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was working on, and may want to clarify some information for you. So are you on the line and available? Yes, no? Okay, perhaps not, but if we do hear from them, Amanda, I don't know if you want to address that with the Rock Run Culvert.
Yeah, I can just kind of provide some context, I guess. So when the Army Corps of Engineers was scoping out their work for that Area 2, it always involved the cleaning of the inside the Rock Run Culvert, as well as cleaning up the tributary down to the river. So one of the things that they had always planned to do as part of that cleaning effort was install a sandbag dam and a pumping diversion system. It happened that we did get the data that Potomac Riverkeeper gave us, and that construction of the dam and the pipe was already in progress. And so really what that did was, what we wanted to do in the first place was to mitigate any additional flows that could be coming out of Rock Run to going further into the tributary and doing any recontamination. So that pumping diversion process is still in place. It'll be in place until we kind of finalize the cleanup efforts in those areas.
And Adam, was there anything else that you wanted to add to any of the conversation? There were a lot of questions there, so I just want to make sure we didn't miss anything. No, okay, all right.
Hi, I'm Heidi Lewis. I'm co-president of the Kevin John Citizens Association. We have a lot of our Kevin John citizens here, and we also really appreciate what you've done and the seriousness, and the speed and seriousness that you took to get this fixed. What actually caused the break?
That's one of the things that's going to be investigated. That's part of the investigation.
And who's doing the investigation?
There's is Gregory here? Or somebody from our general counsel's office?
Is it an engineering firm or a special?
There's a law firm as well as an engineering firm that's
Hold on
involved.
just a second. Let me, Gregory, if you want to step up here. Yeah.
Yeah, so my name's Gregory Hope, interim chief legal counsel with DC Water. So we basically commissioned with a law firm, Beveridge and Diamond, a very reputable firm.
Sure, I mean, lawyers are great, love them, I work for them, but who knows about the sewer pipe and what caused the break?
Right, so what we actually did through them is to actually subcontract, or they subcontract with Black & Veatch, which is a major firm as well. So that's the company that's doing
an engineering firm.
Yes.
And so at this point, you don't actually know what happened in the pipe that caused the break or how it happened. Is it a hairline fracture that's been there for a while?
That's all a part of the investigation that they'll be looking at.
But have there been breaks before in a sewer line that DC Water has responsibility for? Well, I understand that, but I'm interested in when it actually fails. What is it usually? A hairline crack or?
Matt, I'll let you talk a little bit about that, but I think one of the things is that, you don't want to jump to conclusions or overgeneralize, because every situation is unique when it comes to, what happens in a root cause analysis. So I think, Matt, if you can maybe try and address some of that.
I actually think that that's the best answer. I don't think it'd be appropriate to speculate.
There's
I
a
think,
commitment to answering that question.
and that's why the firm has been engaged.
What is the expected lifespan of the geopolymer coating and the slip coating for the sewer?
Sure, the geopolymer adds about 50 years of life, and then the slip lining, I mean, it's a whole new pipe inside of a pipe, so it would exceed the 50 years.
And Matt, this is also material. This is not the old reinforced concrete that is more susceptible, right?
Oh,
These
right. Yeah.
Do you want to explain a
This
little
is
bit of
new.
that?
Well, I would need Musa from an engineering perspective. Do you want to answer that one?
If you could turn around and address the audience.
For Musa Wan, I'm with DC Water, I'm the chief engineer. So for geopolymer, I'm going to give you 50 to 60 years. But in this case, we use geopolymer just to reinforce the pipe. The permanent pipe going to be Hobos. Hobos is going to give you up to 100 years.
How many years?
100 years.
So that's the slip lining and the geopolymer.
The slip lining is basically, it's a new pipe what you are inserting into the existing.
Resistant to sewer gas, as the concrete was made.
And actually Hobos is, because we had concrete, Hobos is plastic. I don't think the bacteria find out a way of eating, plastic yet. So that's why we are using Hobos, yes. Hobos pipes, yeah. That's a manufacturer. Exactly.
And at what point will the entire section, all of that be complete? I guess in Maryland, let's say from Great Falls all the way down to the DC line?
That's 54 miles. So that's why we are prioritizing these things. So if we want to build a 54 mile right now, I don't know how we're going to pay for it. So that's why we have, we looked at our system, we prioritize it. We prioritize it based on the risk and the probability of its failing. So that's why
So this new pipe within a pipe is not yet planned for Great Falls all the way down to the DC line.
So this new pipe and this pipe, as Matt said in his presentation, we have 2,700 feet. That's what we are taking care of now between the manhole 20, which is,
But there are plans for it.
There are plans.
But with a schedule.
Yes, there are plans and schedule.
So what is the answer to that? From Great Falls to the DC line, when will that all be new pipe?
That's why we...
I think Matt wanted to step in.
Well, no, I think Musa had it. So what's planned in the next 10 years is not entire replacement of the pipe. So
I'm not
as
talking about
Dr.
Dulles, I mean from Great Falls to the DC line.
So the near-term projects are the ones that we listed. There's some priorities. So, for example, one that wasn't up on this list was the river crossing at Great Falls. That's a priority, obviously, because of the location. That is a pipe that's encased in concrete. It's downstream of the water intake, but nevertheless, it's important. So, just as Dr. Wan said, what we're doing is we're prioritizing these locations. There are areas, if they weren't exposed to sewer gas, which are going to last much longer. So we've got to prioritize. We've got to identify the locations where there is a certain amount of risk, water crossings, or where there could be more corrosion because of sewer gases. So I don't have an answer for you because that's not the method that we're employing. We're going after the high priority locations and working to address those. And to the extent that there's a reprioritization because of the investigations that we're doing now, we're going to reprioritize.
But so the 60-year-old pipe, there are only small sections currently that are expected to be new pipes, and you're talking about those priority sections.
Yeah, the rehab.
As of yet, there's no plan for the entire pipe because there's not enough
That's
money.
correct. That's correct.
So we do have on our website at dcwater.com/Potomac Interceptor, where we outline and we show you all the areas right now that are currently planned. So you can go there and sort of see those sections that we've identified that are part of the CIP. And then, Matt, I would assume that, it's an ongoing process as we look at the pipe?
Absolutely.
Plan?
So the number one, the rehab method depends on the condition of the pipe. So there was a section of 800 linear feet just north of the break location that was completed in, I think it was December or January. And so we chose that method.
And I hope you're going to look to see if any of that action could have contributed to this break.
We don't believe it has, but that is part of the root cause analysis. So I won't presuppose what happened there.
And if this area where it broke, you said that it had been given like a 3.5 or a 3 on a 1 to 5 scale, and yet it broke. I just encourage you to perhaps change your thought processes on how you're identifying what's vulnerable and recognizing that any 60-year-old concrete pipe carrying sewer, the entirety, is probably vulnerable.
Thank you.
And I think that you talked a little bit about that is part of the third-party audit, is looking at
Absolutely.
how we prioritize and do those things,
Absolutely.
right?
Looking at our protocols for prioritization. Absolutely.
Hi, Rick Duffy. I was here last time. Heidi asked a lot of the questions that I was going to ask about kind of what the forensics are on, what caused this stretch of pipe to fail. It's kind of an unremarkable area there. It's not on a curve, it's not on a hill or anything else like that. It's just kind of there. You were mentioning the stuff about the rocks falling into it, and I would caution against kind of thinking, okay, maybe it was the fill there that caused this to happen. The pipe wore out and it broke, and the fill happened to be there and fall into it and complicated things. But if it was the weight of that stuff, it was because the pipe was wearing out and it just couldn't take it anymore. And so I think I don't want people to get diverted in thinking, okay, well, that's what caused it, because at least that doesn't seem like it would be that way to me. I think the pipe wore out from the inside, from wear and tear, friction, sewage going through it, and the rebar in there corroding, and it just got thin and it collapsed. So, you got a lot of pipe with that, okay? The thing you may want to look at is a group like NIST, National Institute of Science and Technology or whatever, up in Germantown. They have done this kind of analysis on other things, and they may, I don't know whether or not they've been doged or anything else, but if they still have the people there who can do this, they may be able to be a resource for you to try to help figure out what caused it to fail, and that may help you inform where you're going to be looking for where to go next. I came up beforehand and mentioned that, we've been talking of neighbors and stuff like that about the crossing over the river or under the river. And I think most of us, when this initially happened, thought that this probably came across around the American Legion Bridge. I don't know why we thought that, but just everything from Virginia crosses into Maryland at the American Legion Bridge, so unless it's coming across White's Ferry, which doesn't operate anymore. So, but now it's further up towards the intake, and I don't know where it is in relation to the intake, but that's obviously a wider stretch of the river. It's obviously got all sorts of other problems with it if something fails up there. To me, a priority might be to, if there's no redundancy in this system. None. There's no shutoff valve in it. If something happens approaching the river and under the river, I think we're all screwed. That's pretty serious stuff. It's going to be really hard to fix that. So, maybe slip lining it's a good thing to have there, but I would strongly urge people to start thinking about a redundant crossing there, where if you need to shut it off to service one or the other, you've got something to go to. Right now, you've got nothing.
Can we just address sort of that issue? I think because we are looking at the crossing up at Great Falls, we have the geological work that was done on that, right? I don't know if you can provide any information on that, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, that's a section of pipe that we're keeping an eye on. A redundancy study is part of our capital project. I mean, that is one of the priorities to look at is redundancy. You know, you and I talked a little bit before the meeting. The 54 miles of pipe, it would be very expensive and difficult to do a fully redundant pipe. So what we're looking at is key locations. So number one, prioritizing the areas that we've talked about that we may need to reorder our CIP in order to address. But the other is looking at a redundant pipe for certain key areas, just like the river crossing.
Now, one last thing, because I don't want to take up everybody else's time. I know there are other people, and I don't think this is your pipe, but they're at the crossing with Cabin John Creek. It's right there by the towpath and everything else. There is a large sewer main there, and there was a lot of work going on. And I think it's a WSSC pipe, and I think it may have been expanding capacity coming down from Rockville. I don't remember whether it was 2 or 3 summers ago, we had a huge storm. I still believe in climate change, so I think there's still going to be more big storms coming. And this thing was massive, and the trees that came down the creek were gigantic, and there was one gigantic tree that just, bam, ran into that pipe. It held, but that would have been a big problem if that thing hadn't held. They've done some work there to reinforce it. It really doesn't look like it's sufficient to hold against more of those kind of trees hitting the pipe. It's exposed.
So you're talking about the one right down at the bottom
Yeah,
along the canal when you come down by the one-lane bridge?
Go underneath the highway and you're coming around like that, and there's
Yeah, so that is part of the Potomac interceptor.
Is that part of it? Okay.
Yeah.
No, not under the Union Arch. It's right along the...
Yeah, it's right down at the bottom of the path. It goes by the one-lane bridge all the way down.
There was a piece of it coming down the creek. You know, I think WSSC was working. Whichever it is, it's vulnerable.
We appreciate that.
Thank
One
you.
thing that you also mentioned about the rocks and boulders, I don't think that Matt was saying that is the reason. I think what we're saying is that's what exacerbated the size.
Yeah, I know.
What happened,
I'm pretty sure that that's what he was saying, but I don't want other people to think, oh, it was the rocks that did it, and so we don't have to worry about it because it was only places where rocks were. The pipe wore out. They were there, and they made the problem worse.
Gotcha. And one of our partners here from WSSC, I believe, wants to say something.
Yeah, thank you for expressing your concern. We have made assessments of our assets in that area, including what you just mentioned, sir, and we don't see any vulnerability at this point, but we'll take your concern again, and we've noted and make necessary assessments too, but we have done those assessments already. All right, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you. We see you here again. We saw you in our meetings earlier today on the environmental, with our environmental groups, so thank you for coming back.
Good evening, Joe Salonis. First, I'd like to make a request. I understand there's some board members here of DC Water, and my request is that in your scope of independent assessments, to look at the adequacy of the spill response plan and the implementation of those plans. Because any plan that has you waiting 10 days to do water testing after a spill of this magnitude is either A, a bad plan, or B, a poorly executed plan. Okay, so if you could address that. I'm sure there's lots of lessons learned all around, from DC Water, but that's worth capturing as part of this assessment. Then I'd like, I don't know if this is a question for Mr. Ortiz or Amanda. In terms of the getting sediment testing done, a group of stakeholders in Montgomery County have requested this sediment testing 3 weeks ago. Okay, and just very recently we provided a very specific map saying, please test here. And what I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that even though you have this very specific data that says please test here, the critical path is DC Water getting something to Maryland Department of Environment to approve. okay? And we had a comment earlier tonight about the efficiency of bureaucracies. What is keeping you from spending the $3,000 it's going to take to have somebody do sediment testing on Monday morning? Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, the sentiment of your comment is absolutely taken, Joe. And earlier today, so there's a few things. As I said earlier, the testing that we usually do is not sediment testing, so it's a little bit of a pivot. Secondly, DC Water is the responsible party, so we want to make sure that they're doing it. But third, and really importantly, in doing testing, we want to make sure that it's thoughtful in the right places, strategic, QA, QC'd, and is sustainable over a long period of time. So, there's some of the earlier comments were how long are you going to test? How quickly can the results be? This is all stuff we talked about also this afternoon. So we want to make sure that we have a plan that is scientifically valid, that is defensible, thoughtful, and sustainable. But your point is well taken, and we've been talking every day and sharing notes on getting the expeditious plan into the water and into the soil as soon as possible.
Okay, thanks, Joe. And thank you, by the way, for providing us with that information in those locations, because those do actually help inform some of the decisions that they're making. So we appreciate that. Go ahead.
Hey, it's good to be back. Welcome back.
Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity for the crew to fix the repair for Potomac on March 14th, which is 55 days. I'm just looking at the Google search. Is that there's a long time repair timelines. What it means is that they said that it's going to take up to 9 to 10 months in order for the pipeline to be 100% repairs. And particularly as I led through disabilities advocacy, what it means is that the smell can be dangerous for people with disabilities with their health issues, is because I just want to be honest. How long will the smell will be able to get rid of it?
And Amanda, I think that might be something we talk about just with the initial environmental rehabilitation work, and removing the soils is a big part of that, is it not?
Yeah, I think we've already noticed a significant decrease in odors on site, just purely in the biggest aspect of it as we get everything out of the canal itself. So we got a lot of the flow out of the canal, and as we get all of the sediment and the sewage and the sludge out of there, it's going to be a huge difference. So we've seen that already. People out on site have noticed it, have talked about it, people walking by. There still is going to be some nuisance odors for folks that are right there coming by on the towpath, but we're putting in and evaluating some odor control measures that will kind of help mitigate that even further.
But how long does the smells supposed to be gone?
I don't have the exact answer for you on that, but I think that as we really approach getting closer to the clay layer of the canal, that it'll be, every day will be less and less.
Okay, appreciate it. But I also I just saw the images of the bridge that was, if you should compare, but do you know how long is it going to be safe for people with like intellectual and developmental disabilities, especially for the people in the wheelchair, in case if they go around outside since it's springtime?
Sure. So the towpath remains open. It's been fenced off in order to provide some safety. So the entire length of the towpath where we're doing the canal remediation. And as Amanda said, after we restored the flow to the pipe on Saturday, Sunday we had people out starting the initial cleaning of that canal, because we recognize that there's those nuisance odors, and so that is the very first phase. But there is fencing along the towpath.
So is it 100% clear for like people with disabilities if they want to walk through?
The National Park Service has prioritized keeping that towpath open, and so that's why the fence is there.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm a student that goes to Whitman. I find interest in these meetings, and I'm writing an essay about it. So I just wanted to ask you guys. So if you guys don't know what actually caused the burst of the pipe, how are you going to prevent it from happening like further down or in the future?
Sure. So there are certain conditions of the pipe. We do these inspections that look at both the interior of the pipe as well as the thickness of the pipe. And so we have that data. We just want to, when it comes to the root cause of this specific incident, we want to be able for the review that our board is taking to let that take priority. So we do know that like I said earlier, sewer gases do degrade pipes, they become thinner, and that has an impact on obviously the pipe. So those are two of the key areas in our inspections is the number one, the interior condition, but then also the thickness of the pipe that remains after a period of time. And this pipe is about 60 years old.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to ask, is there anyone in the room that's not able to get up and that would like to ask a question, and I can come to you? Anybody? Okay, just want to make sure. Go ahead.
I'm Davey Hearn, resident of Brookmont, a longtime U.S. Wetwater team member for 26 years, been to 3 Olympics and won 2 World Championships. I got a question following up on Joe's questions about sediments. The sediments were deposited at low flow on the Potomac, so now with higher flow gauge levels, around 2 to 3 feet higher sediments to be tested are underwater. To really get good results of sediment testing, that should be tested when flows in the river are lower, similar to the less than 3 feet levels on the Brookmont gauge that were happening while the major leakages of the sewage were happening. And another thing I wanted to point out, unless I'm wrong, Rock Run flows into the Potomac River upstream of the 495 bridge. The tributary where the sewage leak occurred is an unnamed tributary, and if you trace that upstream, it does not link up to Rock Run in any way, shape, or form. You may be referring to it as Rock Run Culvert because that's a way to simplify the naming of it, but it, as far as I can tell, is an unnamed tributary, and it's confusing, for me at least, to be hearing that because I know that Rock Run does not go under that culvert where you're doing the work.
It's interesting that you say that because we had the same question come to our mind because we said, wait, Rock Run is up here. Why is this called Rock Run Culvert? And the Park Service told us that's what it's called. So that is Rock Run Culvert.
Okay, then,
regardless
then
of where
the follow-up
actual
question on that is, what is the name of the culvert that carries Rock Run under the C&O Canal?
Yeah, you'll have to ask the Park Service. You'll have to ask the Park Service. Yeah. Yeah.
Culvert.
I'm okay with you calling it whatever you want, but it lessens your credibility in my mind to hear you call it Rock Run Culvert, because that's not what it is. Thank you.
You might want to take that up with the Park Service then. Sorry. Wait, it's not our, we didn't name it. Yeah.
My name is Edward Sanders. I have been for many years a steward of the C&O Canal between mile 8 and mile 9. I'm a member of Sycamore Island Club and have led scout troops, often actually around Swainson, cleaning it up for many years, and for repairing all the social trails that run, not the towpath, but the social trails. I've got a question really around funding and why it is we haven't yet seen any dollars associated with the amount of money that will be provided to the community who've been impacted. We know in the budget, which was approved last year, DC Water is a very large public corporation with over $1 billion in revenue, and the Potomac Interceptor itself generates over $15 million in revenue. And that's, over the years, created more than $100 million of wholesale funding into DC Water from that Potomac Interceptor. So I raise these numbers, as large as they are, to put into context just how much has been earned compared to what's been spent within this community. A community that for the past 2 months has had an open sewer, the C&O bypass running through it. The C&O bypass has carried 2 billion gallons of sewage, and DC Water has banked over $1 million a month in revenue and hasn't really provided funds to the community or the civic organisations impacted. And the question really is, how can that be? For me, and explaining this to my kids, they said it's greedy, and I seem to agree with them. These kids are at the local elementary school. They can smell this as they walk to school. We try and teach them about the environment. I know DC Water cares about it. You've raised hundreds of millions of dollars with green bonds. You've got ESG covenants in there. You've got debt covenants. You care about environmental justice as well. So we actually want to see it. And I think it's an act of good faith to the community and the civic and the recreational and the sporting and all the environmental groups who are so involved and have for decades been stewards of the canal, of the towpath, of the part of the river that we're talking about. We'd like to see some action. So I'd like DC Water to commit to some sort of funding that's going to be put in place for those communities, not just for the remediation, which we know has to happen on the environmental asset side. There's a community asset side as well. And I think that should happen immediately. And I don't think there'll be anyone in the room who disagree that there needs to be some good faith actions taken in that regard.
Great. Matt, did you want to talk a little bit about, because I think there is a misperception that that money is just sitting in a bank somewhere. That money is invested in a capital investment, right?
So DC Water is a government agency. I mean, we're a cost for service organization. And so we have two budgets, so you probably have them in your hand. We have an operating budget, which pays for operations at Blue Plains and operations of pumps, and about 25% of it's spent on the personnel who run the wastewater treatment plant and deliver fresh water in the District of Columbia. And then we have a capital budget, and that pays for the investments. And so the way that the costs are shared depend on the flow in the asset. So about a third of the flow at the break site comes from Maryland, and the other 2/3 come from Virginia. And so when there is a cost for rehab or replacement of pipe, that is how it's split. It's split according to that cost based on the flow that's in the pipe. And so if we spend $1, then we recover $1 in ratepayer funds. We're not a private company. We don't pay our shareholders. The green bonds that we issue are in order to reduce the cost of debt service, because that makes our rates lower.
Right, and so I think we heard some of that last time around the flow and the charges for flow.
Yeah.
Am I then to understand that DC Water has been collecting money to use our community as an open sewer for the past 2 months?
I'm not sure I understand the question. So the rates that are paid are for either operation of wastewater treatment at Blue Plains, and so the funds pay those costs, pay for the chemicals and the energy and the people. And then on the capital side, what we've done is that we estimate those repair costs to be about $20 million. And so the mayor of the District of Columbia, because DC cannot apply directly to FEMA for funding, so there were two things that happened. The very first request for a declaration was approved by the president. That made $5 million worth of direct federal aid available for this project. And so that is why Amanda talked earlier about the role of the EPA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They provided direct assistance, and then the share of that was 25%. So the federal government paid for 75% of those efforts. The other thing that's in progress right now is a major disaster declaration. And so we've included the $20 million of the costs for the repair and the environmental remediation, as well as about $30 million in costs for that capital project that I talked about. And so those costs together are over $50 million. So that's a request now for the federal government in order to provide assistance. Obviously, ratepayers are important to us. We know that water and sewer services cost money. You probably heard across the country rates are increasing just because of the age of infrastructure. So providing ratepayer relief is important, not only for the customers in the district, but also wholesale customers. So that's why we've moved forward and are trying to get those emergency declarations declared.
And some of that would have paid for the rehabilitation that just occurred upstream from that, right?
I don't think there was any federal aid associated with that.
Sorry, not federal aid. I'm talking about when he was talking about their ratepayer.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The community funding,
absolutely.
not the, I appreciate there's capital funding to fix things. I appreciate there's environmental remediation that needs to happen. There's other assets, and the asset in this room is a community asset. And we have built and restored and been strong stewards of this area for decades. And there has not been $1, as far as I can see, that's come back to those community and civic groups in the past 60 days. So I'd like to know when a fund is going to be set up. And I appreciate there's ratepayers. I also know you're a AAA rated organisation. You can raise debt on this. There are ways to give some people in this room hope that there is going to be more than just our backyards being used as a sewer. I think I'd probably leave it there, and I would like to see some funding outside. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. Go ahead.
Hi, Kathleen Wolf. My husband and I have 3 girls, 2 at Whitman and 1 at Pyle, and we might be in some of the photos. So we're kind of the house that's right at Lock 10. So we've seen everything from the beginning, and I have to say, like, just kudos to the people out there 24/7. The spotlights and the generator and the vibrations and the smell are definitely sort of, it's really 100 yards from us, so we're experiencing it day in, day out, but equal to that is the support that we see and feel. I don't know that I have a question per se. I just think that for us, there's been probably a real psychological impact. The girls don't want to have their friends over.